Hello, everybody, and welcome to People Always Ask. This edition is a helpers edition because we are here to try to figure out, for all of you who formally and informally want to help those in your life, the two biggest questions that I always get asked. And we're going to keep it real. Candance also asked me this because she helps people for a living. And, because she's a helpful person, she helps people who she loves and she cares about, like most of us Black women out here in this world. So today we are going to talk about the two biggest questions. The first is how to be helpful. The most common things in America are for people to have anxiety and to have depression. So it's very normal for people to go through very tough, hard emotions and trauma in everyday life. And as friends, as loved ones, we want to be helpful. Sometimes we can't figure out what that looks like. And the second biggest question is, I don't necessarily want to be their therapist. I'm people's actual therapist, but I'm also people's friends, right? I want to be able to sometimes get the part of this where it's like, I get to have that, well, how are you doing?
Right.
Or maybe I get to have some space. How do I say no? And when do I sort of choose those moments if a person is always kind of going through some tough stuff? Hard question, right? Because sometimes we can't help people. We don't know what to do. And so let's not work hard. Let's work smart. And so Candance is here to help me have this conversation. And if you have any questions, feel free to throw them out there because we can't pick the people we love. Monica, I see you. I see you. I see you.
That's my phrase. Throw them all out. Yes. I'm just kidding.
But, sometimes we can't pick the people who we share community with, and it's not all bad, right? We don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater for everybody. I had an elder at a training that I was doing say that you want to be able to pick, how close you want people in the show of your life. Not everybody needs a backstage pass, but some people should be up in the nosebleed. Some people could be up in the front row. They could be a little closer, but you got to pick how close, but depending on the relationship.
I love that analogy. That's dope.
So, it's no hard feelings, but some people are going to throw bombs even from the parking lot of the concert. And if it's at that level, then we throw them out. Then we might have to fire them, exit, say goodbye. Anyhow, that's part of it, right? We starting to get to the where to say no and how part of this, right? But let's start with the nicer part of the equation, because I know a lot of people want to be helpful. They're not necessarily money management specialists, but people are calling them stressed out about money. And I know that you're just somebody's friend all of the other times that you're not getting paid to do that job. So let's talk about the first thing, which is how to be helpful. Would you consider yourself pretty helpful? Are you the helpful friend?
I have been the helpful friend, the helpful family member, the helpful significant other for a very, very long time. Like, I feel like since I was like 5 years old and up, like I'm always that person.
You named them all, I feel like. That's all the roles you could possibly play in a life. So, some of us, we got to be the helpful child and all that. So I'm going to go through the tips and we're going to talk about them because there's some specific stuff that's helpful and some specific stuff that ain't, and so we'll talk about it because I'm sure you know about it, but, we'll see what your commentary looks like as we go through these. So the first one is definitely just be a witness, not a judge.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's a big one.
Right?
That's a big one. Because, like, what you don't want to do is when someone's trying to tell you about something, they already feel very embarrassed and have that stigmatized feeling around it already. So for you to come and be like, well, yeah, you should have did that. You're stupid. Like, what would you do? Why would you do that? Or, well, no one told you to wear that. Why would you do that? That's not helpful whatsoever.
It's just not helpful. Like, if we could just freeze frame this, it's not helpful. What people do to themselves anyway. So, like, let's just imagine you. You are the expert on you. You happen to know everything you ever been through, everything you ever did. And so you are an expert at messing yourself up emotionally about all the worst things about yourself. So the last thing you need somebody to do is to echo the judgments that you might have of yourself.
Loud.
And be like, hey, have you thought about the fact, that maybe you could have fought harder and that's not helpful. So for particularly a traumatic situations, what we don't want to do, I always tell people ask what, not why, because why questions tend to lead to judgments of your character. You'd be like, well, why did this happen to me? Well, I guess it's just people like me,
Right.
So,
I usually try to say like the hows, right? So how can I make this better, right? How can I change this for the next time? That's how I've trained my brain instead of doing the why. Because when I was younger, that's all I used to do. And all it did was create more panic attacks. So that wasn't fun.
yeah. And I think the hard part about this is that it's really, really tough when people are coming at you with a certain energy, to sort of stay impartial about stuff. But what you got to remember is that's so not personal. That's really not personal. That's just because they're going through, they're totally out of it. They're totally flipped out right now. And so, there's a funny thing that happens. I'm going to put this up real quick. So remember your body, which means that bodies regulate each other. One thing that people don't typically know is that people, if you're in the same space or in the same energy as somebody else, literally your body can either go up because they're going up, like you can get angry because they're getting angry. You can get anxious because they're getting anxious. You can get really worried because they're getting worried. But also the opposite is true, that if you were able to stay calm, it would be enough it would be enough to actually help a person. You don't have to say anything in particular. You don't have to be giving advice. If you can manage to keep your bubble of groundedness for this other person and hold space for them.
Yes.
We've all seen that, mama.
Yeah.
When somebody's freaking out can bring it down.
So I definitely want to touch on that just a little bit, because I know that a lot of people who had anxiety, me being one of them, really crashed like in the beginning of this pandemic. And so what I like to do, and I call her my anchor because she anchors me to the world, right? Because grounding techniques, that for some reason does not work for me. I don't know why. It's never worked for me. And so I call her when I'm spiraling. That's what I call it. I call it spiraling. So when I'm spiraling, I'm like, oh my God, we call her. All right. And she does that. She's like, what's wrong? What's going on? But her calm tone brings me back, as opposed to her being like, oh my God, what happened? What's wrong? I'm coming. You all right? Like, that would make it worse. Cause now I'm going to get freaked out by your freak out. Like that makes it totally worse. So
we're just escalating it.
Yes.
And even if you can't help, right? Like just being calm in saying that you can't help.
Yes.
Why are you calling me right now? Is a lot less helpful than, oh my God, you sound really upset right now and I want to be there, right? But I got to go to this meeting. Can I call you back tonight? That's a very different energy than letting their energy make you so worried that you can't even help them feel like they have a person who cares about them in the world because you picked up the phone like an asshole. And we do that, when we feel worked up, we're like, why are you calling me? It happens, but you got to take care of yourself. Right. And so when you do have the space for other people, another weird thing is this is effortless, is to just be curious.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Cause you asking not harmless questions, right? Not like trying to dig in there, be all up in it, but asking, small questions like, okay, so how did that make you feel? Or what was going on while you felt that? You know what I'm saying? Like that alone is like, as you're talking through it, you start to feel better because you're getting it out, even though it's like small and it feels like the other person cares enough, right? So if you're asking me questions about what's going on with me, as opposed to just like disregarding me, like, oh my God, you're going through something again? What the hell?
How dare you?
You'll be a person that's upset all the time. She does magic.
There's a comment here from Nikki, the diasporan. Hey, that you're doing even more emotional labor for yourself. You could just listen to them without trying to solve their stuff. Absolutely. Honestly, because people are the expert on themselves, if you're just curious, it usually actually does more than giving advice. Like if I'm like, I don't really get why my friend does this. And I'm like, oh, she's so irritating. Why she stay with this man? Maybe I should say out loud, if I were you, I would leave him, help me understand what makes you stay.
Right.
Because that's curiosity rather than judgment, and it's more helpful to figure that out. And then you as their friend, when you do offer help, can offer it from the place of understanding instead of just being like, well, this bitch don't want to leave this dude and, that's on her. You know what I mean? Like, well, I mean, yeah, it is on her. It's her burden to bear, so don't make it yours. You ain't got to do that labor. That's her work to do. So you certainly don't have to be all up in the mess. Keep your boundaries up. Make sure that it's not your problem. So let me pop back over. And so if you're going to tell people nice stuff about themselves, by the way, people don't believe general nice compliments. This is just a fact. Like if you tell somebody who thinks that they're ugly, you're pretty.
That's so true. They'll be like, no.
But what you got to do is you got to make it compliment specific. So if you're going to bother trying to pump somebody up, first of all, tell the truth. Don't just be out here lying to people. Tell the truth. If you ain't got nothing valid to say, be quiet. But if you just listen. Remember the first stuff. You could just be curious and shut the fuck up. But if you want to say something nice, if you have something, you're like, wow, this person can't even see themselves. Let me try to tell them something. But, oh, man, Candance, you don't see how valuable you are to the world. You don't need this man. And I say, you know what I mean? Instead of just saying that general thing, you got to be like, Candance, listen to me. You remember when you were alone before, you were thriving. You had your own business. You were happy. You were working out every single day. Your diet was good. And I think that even without him, and maybe especially without him, you might be better. Look at you. I think you're actually amazing. Look how specific that is, right? Like it's hard not to feel good about yourself. Not just that you're pretty, Candance, but I really like the way that your glasses sit on your cheekbones, and I love that nose ring, and your smile is so brilliant, right? Specific. Yeah. She's feeling it. She's feeling it. So if you're gonna try to help somebody and give them a compliment, try to be specific and try to be honest, because I think people try to lie to make things better sometimes.
Absolutely. And you know what else is you are actually giving them the affirmations that they need, right? So something that someone used to say to me all the time was like, you're enough, because I used to be so upset all the time about like my toxic family and things like that. And I just like, they don't care about me. Right. And so this friend would always counter that with, you're enough. You're worth it. You are worth love. And she gave me the affirmations that I needed to pump myself out of feeling like I ain't shit.
It ain't easy. It ain't easy because you could believe the worst thoughts about yourself. And so also as the person who has to be there for people and regulate yourself and stuff, you have to set an example for self-care. So we're getting closer to the part of saying no every step of the way of this helping method, because really, if you can't say no, then one of the hardest things that's going to happen is that you can't justify telling somebody else that they can say no either. And you're not going to be as helpful as you think you are, right? So like if you haven't sort of met yourself in that place where you can say genuinely, can I say that I can manage my anxiety well enough to be helping somebody else every single time that they call me? Right? And maybe I can. And if I could just be honest about that with somebody who's my friend, if this is a sisterhood, like if me and Candance really are building a sisterhood and not just a dependency where she needs me.
Right.
Is that she's going to understand that sometimes I'm actually not going to be able to be there for her because I actually have to take care of myself. And I have this whole other life that can be really heavy. And these are the ways that I look at this, right? This is the way that I do it, right? I do it by sometimes I don't pick up the phone when other people are stressing out because I need a day. I do it by making sure that, I balance my work and my personal life. I do it this way. So you have to somehow really hold yourself accountable. If you're going to say, I want to be helpful, you got to be honest. We're all human, right? I'm a therapist, but I also have anxiety, right? I also have family members. I also know people that go through a lot of stuff. So every time that I'm helping people, I have to be able to say, well, do I actually practice what I preach? Because I'll hear myself in a session and be like, girl,
that was for you.
And it's basic stuff. It's like, go to sleep, eat your meals, make sure that your food is decent. You know what I mean? Like basic stuff. I mean, it's hard because you work for yourself, Candace.
Yeah. So, yeah, I'm going to jump in on that part. So, something that I was not doing again in the beginning of this pandemic. So, I was like, oh my God, I have time to do all of the things that I wasn't able to do before. And so, I have people like pulling me in each and every direction. And what I started to do, and this was after I took like a self-help kind of course with someone. It was called 100 Days to a Whole You. And it taught me, if it didn't teach me anything at all, it taught me to hold space for yourself, right? And how I mean to say that is I didn't realize I was planning my day so tight, I had no space for Candace. I had no time to say, like literally no, I'm just going, 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 going. And so now what I do is I build out that time. So if it's 15 minutes in between clients, if it's an hour, and I've come to realize how much space I need for each thing. So for clients, I need 15 minutes. For speaking engagements, I need an hour. Like if I'm going to pack 2 of them in there, I need a whole hour. I might need to do it 2 hours. I might need to catch a nap in there, right? And then another really great thing that I started doing was taking Sunday to put my phone on Do Not Disturb. Don't talk to me for the entire day, right? And I don't care if you see me on social media, just pretend I ain't here on Sunday, okay? Because I have a little social media, addiction. But like I keep Sunday for myself, and everyone knows, like, don't reach out to me. My phone's on Do Not Disturb. Yes, you will get ignored. No, I don't care if your house is burning today. It's got to burn tomorrow, or it should have burned yesterday.
And people adjust.
Yes,
will adjust. Like they will absolutely adjust, because if you're just the person who said, I remember I had a roommate, shout out to Kyla, who she didn't want to come out with me one time, and I was so taken aback because I'm so used to doing whatever people want me to do. You know what I mean? That if somebody said, come on, girl, come out, I'd be like, I'll go out with, like I just go with it. And she was like, she turned to me and she said, I don't feel like going out. Don't make me feel bad for trying to take care of myself. And I was like, damn, yo, that is what I'm doing. And let me pull back, right? But that's a good example for me, because I was like, wow, you could say no to stuff, and it's from a place of love. It's not from a place of, I don't like you, I don't ever want to go out with you.
Right.
It's really just like if you need something, if you need to take care of yourself, or you're not going to be the friend that you want to be to that person later. Because that's a recipe for resentment. If you don't take care of yourself and you taking care of other people, I promise you, I could bet money on it that right now you feel resentful toward them. You don't feel good. That ain't how that works. You don't just be like, I'm just going to give to you. I want nothing. I'm fine with getting no time for that does not work. And you expect to get it back. You expect it on some like real worship, because you're helpful. People are not going to do what they should do in terms of like that kind of reciprocity. You got to take care of yourself.
And you have to teach them how to reciprocate with you. So we also come from this standpoint where we think that everyone has gone through the same situations that we have, so they're going to react the way that we expect them to react.
Mm-hmm.
I come from a whole different perspective than you do, right? So where you would want me to be like all on top of you, I may come from a perspective where it's like, oh no, something like this means pull back, right? So you teach me how to treat you. You teach me how to reciprocate with you, so that I know going forward, okay, this is what I have to do. Case in point, the whole taking the Sunday off. I had one of my friends, and she's a very recent friend within the last year, and she calls me like every day. And in the beginning of our friendship, I would give her leniency, because I don't know. I don't know what made me do it. And I would just be like, oh, okay, I'll talk to her a little bit on Sunday. She calls me every day. And I just had to say, man, no, like today is for me. And she adjusted. She was like, I know it's Sunday. I'll talk to you another time. I just wanted to text you this, whatever. And I'll see it like the next day, obviously, because I don't look at my phone. But they adjust. You teach people how to reciprocate with you.
Yeah. And I mean, you have to interpret, right? Like you have to be able to interpret your behavior. You can't just shut people out and expect them to understand that it's coming from a place of you taking care of yourself. You also have to communicate, and that's self-care too. If you don't care enough about our sisterhood to communicate, what you're doing when you're taking care of yourself, then you're not interested in my well-being. Because if you don't care if I hurt you and you don't care if you hurt me, like that's a real issue. That's not a good situation anyway. But if we're really in a situation where it's reciprocal, where it's fair, even as a therapist, and this is true even professionally, if you disrespect me in the room and I really feel like you don't understand that I have boundaries, there's things I need to do to take care of myself. You can't be coming to my house. You can't be doing all types of wild stuff and think that just because you right, you don't owe me, right? Like I got boundaries. And so even with people, simple stuff, right? Cursing at you, yelling at you because you sort of make mistakes, even you valid make mistakes, right? There's a way to really inform people that like, listen, here's what I'm gonna do with you and here's what I'm not gonna do. And that's really just about the consequences for us, because this is not gonna go well if I start walking down the path of you and me disrespecting each other in this room. That's not gonna be a good relationship after here. We're gonna have a problem and we need to resolve that sooner rather than later. Like, and that's set an example. An example. If you want to say when we have a problem, we can talk about it and we can resolve it. It's not the end of our friendship. Put your money where your mouth is.
Right. Right. And I mean, that comes with growing up, right? Like, another thing that I have realized, and then this especially happens in long-term friendships, right? Because they're so used to how things were in the beginning, but it's like, we were teenagers then. Why would you think that we would continue along the same methods as we get older? Life happens, things happen. And so even the friendship has to adjust at some point. You have to understand that, okay, now I have a husband. Now I have kids, you know? You're still single. This is my thing, right? Because I'm a single friend, right? So I have to realize that my other friends have whole families, so they can't communicate with me as much as before. And so I can't have that pent up aggression. It's like, you don't have any time for me. You're not really my friend. Whoa.
Right. And if they not, they not.
Right.
You know what I mean? Set your boundaries, set your distance, put them in the freaking nosebleed, put them in the parking lot of the show, put them wherever they need to be for you to feel safe.
Adjust the friendship level. That's it.
I don't need to trust you to do everything. You know what I need? I mean, I don't need you to be able to fix my car and show up on time for my wedding. If I know you can't do one, right, or the other, then I'm just gonna know that now. Like, we're not gonna get personal about it, because I actually don't believe people are genuinely out to hurt you most of the time. They might be selfish. They might be self-focused.
Right.
But it doesn't mean that they're doing it with the malicious intention of trying to make your life worse. Very rarely. You know, sometimes people hate you, but it's not as common as people would like to think.
You throw them out, Monica. That right there.
Right, throw those people out. You know, and a lot of us can have people in our lives that repeat trauma cycles for us. So this is just a little piece of education. If you come from a hectic background, you might have a lot of people who pull on you in familiar but stressful ways. But stress is going to hurt your heart, literally and figuratively. But what we're tempted to do, because our body remembers stuff, is to do what we learn to do. If we know how to handle people who are wilding out and need us to be there 24/7, sensitive, ready to react to anything, sometimes we'll accidentally end up repeating that relationship in our friendships and our romantic relationships, even at our job. I'm gonna pause there, because some people have jobs that are very similar to the dynamics they have with their parents. And if you're realizing that right now, you know, I suggest you examine that, right? And try to correct it, reparent it a little bit, because you deserve to take care of yourself in every single relationship that you have, including at work, right? And so when you're over kind of using yourself that way, it can be very familiar and you can feel like you deserve more because that's the history you come from. But always and forever, you should have been able to take space to feel your feelings, take space, take care of yourself, and then come back when you're ready and do the work that you need to do. Everywhere. You know, like if your partner is just like, no, you can't leave and feel better. Well, damn, I can't take a break. I can't go in the shower. You know what I mean? Like, that's not healthy. We got to set an example of the fact that it's like, we're going to do this together. But last tip, before we get into the part of when definitely not to help people anymore, is before you talk WAIT. So WAIT is an acronym. And I teach my students this because in therapy, this is kind of important. It stands for, why am I talking?
Wow. Wait, I like that. I'm stealing that.
And, you know, and so one of the things that becomes really important for anybody who wants to be helpful is there's a lot of things you can say because you're uncomfortable. So an example would be if somebody calls you and they're depressed, and this is actually something, you know, I want to warn people if there's a trigger around anything to do with depression and suicidality. I'm going to talk about this a little bit more specifically for a second, because a lot of people might know somebody who calls them feeling like it would be better if they weren't here, whatever version of that they're saying.
Mhm.
And one of the things that's really difficult to know is what to say.
Yeah.
And so we can try to be curious, we can try to compliment, we can try to do a lot of things that we said on this list, right? We can witness them. But before you say anything, out of nervousness, out of discomfort, out of judgment, wait, right? Ask yourself, why am I talking? Because this situation is bigger in this moment, safety wise, than what your anxiety feels like needs to happen. You are not, by most likely chance, somebody who is going to be able to literally go and save their life right now, right? So what we need you to be able to do is to keep your body calm, like we were talking about, and be that body for them, literally.
Yep. Yep.
And then whatever you say, right? Because this is ridiculous territory, and people say crazy stuff. I've heard specifically a lot of families of color say really crazy stuff when people say that they are feeling depressed. You know, they're making it up, they're being dramatic. You just want to feel bad. Some people are just committed to feeling bad. That kind of stuff where it really, 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 why are you talking?
No, definitely, definitely. And I mean, sometimes, and that comes with also like just differentiating and understanding, especially if this is a repeat person who comes to you, right? Just understanding what works and what doesn't, right? So if you are the friend, and this is not to say that you have to sit there and study them, because again, we'll get to the part where you're not their therapist, but you should still know what to kind of sort of do. Like, is this the moment where I jump in and say, you're amazing, you're beautiful, you're great? Or is this the moment where I just sit here quiet on the phone with you or hug you, right? If you're in the same space with them, just sit there with them, right? You don't always have to speak. And this is something I had to teach my friends to do for me, right? Sometimes and I've learned how to control my anxiety on my own, but that came from trial and error, right? So at first I was relying on them a lot. And
Mhm.
so when I got new friends, I would be like, okay, so if this happens, I don't know if it will, but if this happens, just do this. Start with this. Just sit there with me, right? I don't need you to be my therapist. I don't need you to talk me through it. I just need you to make sure that I'm okay. Right?
Yeah. And
Yeah.
I mean, if you can't, I mean, this is just bringing us to the last part, right? Why am I talking? So what you're going to notice about this acronym is it seems a little judgmental, but it's really a self-evaluation
Mhm.
of what can you actually do about the situation that's sitting in front of you. If you're feeling overwhelmed, there might be a pretty big chance that you're in too deep with somebody who needs more help than you can actually provide them in the moment. You might be able to listen, but what you might notice in your gut, what you actually might be feeling is that this is urgent and I don't know what to do.
Mhm.
And you should, as their friend, be able to communicate that to somebody who cares about them or them to the point that you feel safe again. Because it's not up to you to be somebody's ER doctor. It's not up to you to be somebody's sobriety coach. It's not up to you to be somebody's financial specialist,
Nope.
right?
Send them
And
to me.
and I don't know how this works when it comes to money, but I know people hit people up for money all the time, right? And we were talking about self-care,
There's a
right?
there's a
Let's go backwards because when we're talking about sort of saying no to people, I think self-care is the perfect place to start because that's really all it is, right? You have to have boundaries with people. This is not a maybe, right? This is you in every moment when you feel something in your body being off. And look, Monica's saying this. It goes back to being present with the conversation and not being too busy to give them attention, right?
And if you are too busy, say that. Right?
Right.
And I can go find someone else to help me, right? Like it doesn't necessarily have to be you just because you're the first point of contact.
Right. And I mean, I think the hardest thing here is that one of the things that we like to do is we like to be helpful. It's actually rewarding for us to be helpful. So like we can't lie that if we are helpful, that it's some, we kind of get something out of it.
Yeah.
But even with money, even with parents and children, even with family dynamics, I'm sure this comes up, Candace.
So
what does it look like to take care of yourself?
So I just want to say that that's actually a financial disorder. It's called financial enabling. So you don't want to do that. And a lot of Black families feel like we have to give each other our last. Like that's actually a saying. Like, I would give you the last off my back.
Mm-hmm.
Why? That's for you. You should never do that, right? Because how can you give from an empty cup? Are you really giving to me, or are you just loaning me a piece of you so you can take it back later, right? So that's the catch-22 that often happens, right? I'm going to give you this money, but either you have to give it back to me or I'm going to hold it over your head for the rest of the time, right? And that's not helpful either. So that financial enabling is really bad. Don't give out money if you don't, if you're going to expect it back, right? So if you're going to give money, and I'm number one, I'm not, I already, you know, and you set that financial boundary, right? You let people know I'm not the person to ask for money. My number one rule, and because it ruins every single, it has ruined so many relationships for me. Even $30 has ruined.
I know people have to come to you with a sad story. I know people in your family and your life have to come. So you don't feel bad. Tell the truth. What do you do? What do you do? I'm here thinking, in my mind, I've heard a million stories. I know you've probably heard a million stories as to why you should help.
But that's not, it is not my job to take care of full grown people. That's their job, right? So let me give you the advice. Let me give you the information, right? Because if I give you this little bit, you'll get used to me giving it to you, right? And then you'll just keep coming back to me. That's your answer. That's your automatic answer, as opposed to, let me figure this out on my own. Let me go and do this for myself. It'll be, oh, well, Candace will handle it. I don't have to worry because Candace will handle it.
Which is not a way of life.
Not how you're supposed to go through life, right?
That's not a way of life. Yeah. I mean, and I think that's the hard part of this, right? Is that when we're talking about saying no to people, I think the one barometer that I always ask myself with personal relationships is like, would I be okay with this being our relationship forever? Like, if I set this tone, you know what I mean? Like, if I set this tone where it's like, anytime, during anything, I'm going to do anything that you want, would that be something that actually would feel good for me and in my body, right? Because I'm all about what your body tells you.
Yep.
I'm just like, that's not something that I'd be comfortable with. So we need to establish right out of the gate that there's some days for me, as a person who works with people of color who are traumatized and anxious, that I will not have the capacity to do as much as you want me to do, even if I care about you. I care about you and I can't help you right now is a very real thing.
Yes.
And if I wouldn't be any decent person if I just took people's money to keep them in therapy forever, the goal of the therapy is really just like, you know, you need to be able to take care of yourself. When you walk out of this room, you need to be enabled with the tools to do this on your own. You don't need to be able to call me every single time you have a crisis and feel like if you don't have me, you're going to fall apart. That's not good.
Right.
And so we're talking about the difference between codependency and enabling, which is something that's possible in every single relationship that you have. It could be any dynamic. And it could be financial, which I really didn't even think about it in that context, right?
Yeah, because it's different dynamics, right? It could be grandparent and grandchild. It can be mom and kid. It can be mom and dad. It can be, you and your significant other. Like, and it's not healthy. If you're going to contribute to a space where we jointly work towards something, that's a different story, right? But if it's something where you feel entitled to what I have because I've given it to you before, that's a problem. And that's why I always say, do my number one financial boundary, do not lend money. I don't even care if it's $5. I'd be like, you really about to die for this $5? Are you going to die right now? If you're not going to die, then you don't need the $5. You can go without it.
Right. So we getting into the no category. So we avoid enabling and codependence. Don't do it. Just don't do it. If you think that the difference between enabling and helping, as far as I'm concerned, when I tell people in like families or relationships, I'll be like, enabling is doing stuff for people that really they should and can do for themselves.
Yep.
Not that they can't do it and you're telling them to do it anyway, right? Or that they maybe could do it, but they shouldn't be able to, they shouldn't have to be in that situation. But both, right? That you could tell, like, actually as a person in your situation, it would be more helpful for you to be able to do this yourself
Right.
than for me to do it. Now you're getting into the sort of category of just enabling people. And if you know there's a better way for them to resolve their problem, even with substance abuse. Substance abuse is never about the freaking substance, like 9 times out of 10, except maybe with some very addictive shit. But 9 times out of 10 is because drugs work, but not the way you want them to after a while. So it's really tough because I'm like, after time, it can seem safer to say, well, I'm going to help you. I'm going to save you from dying. But then it puts people in a really rough spot because you have to ask yourself, should this person, right, be able to avoid a consequence that maybe they would have in the world as an adult without me, right? Yeah. Because I'm here and they want to use. It's a tough question because now they need you. And that can be its own kind of addictive thing for some of us. Some of us like to be needed, but it's a very dangerous and unhealthy dynamic to start to get into.
Definitely. And for the finances, so I'm not saying right out the gate, just be like, oh, if you're asking me for money, no. That's not what I'm saying. So what I usually do is I ask. I'm inquisitive, right? So someone who's a financial enabler, they tend to not ask. They just hand the money and just let the person go and do whatever with it. Now, I want to know, what do you need this money for? For how long do you need this money? Do you really need this money? Or are you saying that you're just impatient and you can't wait till your next paycheck? Because that's a separate issue. You just need to wait, right? So that's why I said, like, it's a are you gonna die right now without this money kind of question. And if you're not gonna die, you can wait.
You don't want to put yourself in a situation where, like, if I'm Daddy Warbucks and I want to support full-grown human beings, then that's what I want to do. Fuck it, like, do it. I don't care. Like, that's your prerogative. You can choose to do that. Right. The hard thing is that if I really don't have it to give, I probably shouldn't be loaning it out and lending it out like I do, because that's going to be a really dangerous pattern for you guys to have. As if I want to go through a relationship where at every given point I'm like, yo, you owe me money. Where's my money at? I see you spending money on shoes. I seen you spending money on this crab bake that you did the other day. Like, it should not feel like a personal vendetta.
Media, because it's like, girl, you owe me $10. How you going to get seafood today? Where's the seafood money coming from? Now you're if you get on the phone with your girl the next day or whatever, or later on, you snippy with her now, because it's like, where my money at, girl? Like, that, it creates too much of a dissonance, of a disconnect with that other person over, and I'm telling you, it's down to like $5 sometimes, okay? And other people feeling like they're entitled to your money because you have it. So you
right.
In that case where if you don't have it, don't give it. Absolutely. But even in my situation where I am in a place to give it, I am not obligated to give it to you just because I have it either.
I don't mean to say on a systemic level, so don't get me wrong here, people, right? You want to rob people of resources and then say, figure it out because it'll make you stronger. That's not what we're saying.
No, absolutely
not. Don't get carried away and misinterpret that conversation, but on an individual level, you definitely need to have boundaries. And there's a difference between spending money on your child and spending money on your friend, Susie, who lives down the block, who just got a lot of issues, right? So, like, we got to make sure that the relationship makes sense. And I always say boundaries are in your body. If you're comfortable giving $5, you won't feel nothing. But if you give him more than you can really give, you're going to probably feel it right away. It's going to be uncomfortable. I don't even like to pay big bills because I feel like a sinking. I'll be like, damn, I don't even like to give away this much money at once. You know what I mean? Like, I know where my limit is because I can feel it when I see it leaving the bank, like
anxiety, little bubble that you get, right?
Oh, survival money just gone. Jesus. On one item.
Your emergency fund. I'm just gonna throw that out there.
Look at you giving them financial tips. So one of the things that's definitely something that people don't think about is in relationships where you help people a lot, you're probably actually gonna, if somebody is, you in a nice little place, that you can start to experience burnout, right? So we're gonna talk about what the signs of burnout are. Because if you are around people and you feel like they're sort of asking too much, they're draining you, there's not a lot of reward. And that's what I was saying at the beginning of this. This has to be a two-way street. If this is a friendship or a relationship in a family, what you really need to feel is we care about each other.
Correct.
That's where the real reward of the relationship and community is. Yes. It's not all ATM and I just give out and you just don't really kind of give back. I don't have enough money in the bank for that to be the relationship, emotionally or literally. So it's a very tough thing, but some people are burnt out probably right now and don't even know it. So I'm gonna just put these signs up here real quick. So we do a litmus test. Are you burnt out in one of your relationships where you're helping somebody right now? Let's see. 1, are you experiencing some exhaustion? Might be physical, might be emotional. They might call your phone and you actually just notice in your body, you get tired, you don't want to do it.
Yep.
Have the conversation, you're already tired. Number 2, cynicism and detachment. I don't even care. You remember, I don't even care if she leave that man at this point.
Yep.
If you've gotten there, right? You might be burnt out in your friendship, relationship, partnership, family membership. And then 3, feeling ineffective and a lack of accomplishment, right? So that also means that you don't feel helpful. You always call me and it never helps.
Right. Because again, you're giving from an empty cup or you keep giving over what you should be giving them. Like, where's the boundary at?
And I've been here with people. I've been here and had to learn the hard way that this is not my burden. There's nothing I can do about this. This is the struggle that I'm witnessing, but it's not my responsibility.
Right. Exactly.
And everybody, you don't have to do anything. Let me be very clear. I am not a person who's going to tell you that you got to do something in particular. You don't have to do anything. If you don't, you might suffer the consequences. I'm not saying things are consequenceless, but you don't have to do anything. The reason you help somebody in a relationship is because you care about that relationship.
Right. Mm-hmm.
If it gets to the point where you don't care about the relationship anymore, you don't care about the person, you feel like it's burning you out, right? All these things are true. Mm-hmm. Now we're getting to a place where you actually need to have a conversation. I call it talking about the talking.
Cool. Yeah. Going round and round in circles. Like
we got to be like, let's talk about how we be talking, right? Like I've noticed that you always call me like this. And some days I'm actually having a bad day too. So it's like, it's not actually just you. And I actually feel like, I don't know what it is, but I'm resentful, I'm frustrated, right? And I don't want to feel that way because I care about you. And this is the hard part. It's not but, it's and. And I don't want to feel that way. And I do, right? And I'm exhausted. I'm detached. I don't give a fuck, right? You know what I mean? And then I feel ineffective. This isn't even helping. I don't even know what we're doing here, right? Talking about the talking. That's not, let's not do this again.
And even like just the way that you contact that person, like, because you know that they're the person that you go to for all of your problems, you think just right out the gate, you can just throw it on them every single time. That's not okay either. Like check in with your friend. Is that your friend? If you're not checking in with them to make sure that they're in a space for you to dump that on them, ask them. Like, hey, how are you today? How are you doing?
Check in.
Okay.
You know what it means to people?
Exactly. Like, oh, you okay? Okay, good. So I know that, I always come to you about things and you let me know if this is okay today, but I really need to talk to you right now about something. That is fine. Like I was in a feed on Instagram or like Facebook or something, and that was the thing. One of the issues was that their friend kept contacting them and like they would instead start talking about themselves instead of saying, hey, what's going on with you? What's up with your life, right? It's always, the conversation is always directed towards them. And that can happen when you have a friend who's always in distress.
Yeah.
Right? Conversation always veers back to them.
It's a hard experience.
Yeah, you want to make sure you say, hey, how are you today? Let's have a whole conversation just about you today. Do you know how valuable it is, even for at least one out of those 100 conversations, for it to be about them?
Well, I mean, and the hard part is you don't want to force it, right? But if it's a true relationship, then hopefully you do care, right?
Right.
And that's something that should be a part of it. Monica says, talking about the talking, but why am I talking? And so, and this is the truth, right? And this goes back to what we were talking about last episode with the anxiety. Candace brought it up, right? Like last episode, I was talking about people who have anxiety in relationships will sometimes need other people to make them feel better. They're using other people to regulate their feeling about themselves. Now, that's not your burden to bear, but that doesn't mean that none of your friends are going to be anxious, right? That doesn't mean that just because that ain't your problem, right, that none of your friends are going to be anxious. And it actually doesn't mean that none of your worthwhile friends are going to be anxious. So, like, it might be something where it's a both and. I think this relationship is worth it. I want to be in your life. And this dynamic that comes up between us has to change.
Right. Like tell them like I have reached my limit. This is my limit. This is how much I have to give to you. And you can even go like as far as to say like, I sis, like once a week, I'm gonna need you to just not talk to me. Like talk to your friend and tell them where your boundaries are. Where is your limit at? Right? You may be able to go a whole month just listening to her chat. And that 30th day, you like, what the hell? Right? So where is your limit at? You have to first decipher what that is, right? And you know where to place the boundary.
And the truth of the matter is you're not always going to think that it's worth it to have this conversation. You may not feel like it's worth it in every relationship that's draining you to have a full-blown conversation about what we're going to do and how it's going to look. You might just want to shake a tail feather and do what you got to do. If you need to pick your phone up less, pick your phone up less. If you need to not answer text messages while you work, don't answer text messages while you work. Give yourself space to be the type of human being on this planet that you want to be by giving yourself appropriate behaviors that match what you say you want for yourself. If I don't want to pick up the phone when I'm working, then I shouldn't be picking up the phone when I'm working. It sounds so simple, right? But we do things to ourselves all the time where we don't really want to be doing it. And we have a choice, but we're so used to feeling like we're responsible for the way everybody else feels. They'll get through it, right? If you're talking about a full-grown adult who's gotten through things alone before, the odds are that they can get through them again and without you. So they will be okay. And in fact, by the time you call back, they might be okay. And it might be okay that you're not their number one go-to every single time. Because again, the reality I want is that I'm not your number one every single time because you have a whole community of people or a network of close friends that you can lean in on other than just me. Hopefully this is not going to be dependent on me being there for you, even if you're anxious.
Yeah, like that's the whole where that comes from, that whole thought process of it takes a tribe. That's not only when you're a kid, right? That's forever, right?
You should always have a tribe. It's not like now you don't need nobody. You just get married and you just need that person till the day that you die.
That's not how that works.
That's disgusting. Don't do it.
Or shouldn't be a therapist either. Like they're not your therapist either.
That's not fair. And sometimes I'll tell people like you can only do what you can do, but if it's not your job, give it to the person whose job it is. If I actually think, hey, my partner has an issue with a substance, but I'm not a substance abuse specialist, then my boundary needs to sound something like, in order for me to stay with you and really feel comfortable, I need you to get some information about a program or get to a therapist or get to a place where, you're really working with a sobriety coach, or else I don't know if I feel safe. That's just the truth. Feel your feelings and tell the truth, people. You ain't got to do much. That's the limit. And tell the truth. Conflict resolution 101 is that maybe it would do better if you could feel your feelings and with love. And even if it's just listen, because I know some people are like, I'm not good at talking about my feelings. I'm not talking about happy, sad, frustrated, angry.
Right. Those are normal.
You could say that if you got the access to those words when you're really worked up, good for you. Then you could do that simple translation. But if you just feel worked up, you can say something simple like, every time you call me, I can feel my heart start racing.
Right.
And I can feel myself wonder if I should pick up the phone. I'm worried. That's talking about your feelings. You know enough about yourself. You're the expert on you. You know enough about yourself to actually tell somebody the truth about what your sensations are.
And I want to just input, sometimes it's not even that. Sometimes it's you just don't want to answer the phone, right? So as soon as you see that person pop up on the phone, you're just like, ugh.
Yep.
Get that feeling or that, oh man, feeling, that's it. You've reached your limit.
And the only answer for burnout is for you to take a break and to take care of yourself so you can take care of you and get back to you. There's days where I have a bad day or a bad night and I got to wake up and do 4 sessions with people who have all sorts of issues that aren't mine.
Right.
And I have to consciously take the time in between to say, well, now is not the time where I'm going to go spend my energy on other things. I'm going to make sure I use this time to take care of me,
Yes.
to make sure I feel like the person I really want to be. And I'm going to do that by doing some deep breathing, at least 10 breaths before every single session to make sure that I'm present with this person. I'm not working too hard because you work too hard in the session if you're not present. You'd be like, let me help, let me help, let me help.
Mm-mm. It's the truth. It's the truth.
You come in all over the place. I was thinking about some stuff. You be real. It's like you get exhausted. You don't even think about the fact that if you're anxious as a person trying to help, that you're going to do too much. You're going to exhaust yourself in the effort of trying to help somebody. It's so simple, but it's like you have to, this is the body thing, right? Like you have to be good to help people for real. Because if you at the point where you're angry, judgmental, cynical, you're giving up, how in the world are you genuinely, and this is the truth, you have to believe people can change to help them change.
And they have to believe it too. Because you can't sit there and try to change a stubborn mule. Like
But that's what I mean. If we get to the point where you really feel like this ain't going nowhere, you should back away. This ain't just for you. This is for both of you because nobody needs a friend that's cynical, doesn't believe in them, is tired of hearing from them. I don't want that friend.
I don't want that
friend.
Throw
Throw him out, right? And you should have a boundary too. If you feel like and you should know you can do better. Right? You don't need to hold on to this friendship so tightly that you think that no one else in your world can be helpful. You could do better. Try to find somebody who makes you feel like you. If you don't know who they are, take note of when you feel okay and figure out who's around. But I think
it's key.
I guess we should be asking, do you want to change? Well, it depends on the issue, right? And I think the bigger question, right, is some people really genuinely, maybe they want to, but right, what would it even look like? Do you even think you're even capable of coming up with a plan, of learning how to do the thing that you would need to do to be able to change? This is how small your beliefs need to start. Do you believe you're capable of even learning to do the thing that you would need to do in order to make this happen? And I think you think you could do it right now, but do you think that you could gain the resources outside of me? Because I'm not going to do it. It ain't my job.
Right.
But could you gain enough resources outside of me to really do this? Because otherwise, we're going to have to set a very firm boundary around what this looks like. And maybe I can't really know you at all. And that's what I mean. Some people are going to throw bombs from the parking lot. Some people can't be in this show at all. Like you set the boundary, they still messing you up. They still coming around.
Yep. They just like, it's about me and it's always going to be about me. So I need you to, honestly, you don't need those kind of people in your life.
What kind of community are you building if you're the only helper and everybody else is somebody who you feel resentful towards? That's not even a community that you can appreciate. And that's a real problem in and of itself. You shouldn't be burnt out. And this even goes for your job. I mean, America has an issue with this. If at your job, you're resentful towards every single person at your job, but you take home a paycheck, there's no way you're doing that job the way that you would be. There's studies on it, right? People who don't like their job do a worse job. They're less productive. They're less healthy. It's not a good look. So burnout happens all over the place with every relationship. But let's get out of here because we've been over the prime time slot for a little while, and I don't want to drag anybody out any longer. So hopefully today you learned some things about how to take care of yourself, because really, that's all I want for you. All I want for you are healthy relationships that feel good. I don't want you to be out here feeling burnt out. I don't want you to be here feeling like you have to help every single person every single time they ask. if anything that we learned today is that you need to be an example of self-care if you're going to help people anyway.
Yep, absolutely.
So whether it's people trying to tickle your pockets for a little extra help, or it's emotional deposits that they're looking for, just make sure you got enough in your bank to feel comfortable and safe before you're doing any sort of labor where you're giving out
Yep.
help to people, because if they're not making deposits, then it doesn't really make sense for them to be making withdrawals. That's just not the way. That's not the way a good account is set up. You're going to go burnt out. You're going to go broke. And so
I just want to add one little thing, some really great advice that I got last year, and that was you were supposed to give from your overflow, right? And so everyone's always so stuck on, the glass half full and it's half empty. I want a full cup. I want a cup that's bursting at the brim. That's what I want. You should want, right? So that is what you give. You give the extra, the stuff that's falling out of the cup, not the stuff that's in the cup. Even if it's like this much to the top, still ain't your overflow. Okay? So give from your overflow.
Give from that overflow. Don't be afraid to set boundaries and give from that overflow. So make sure that the people who stick around are the people who you really want in your community. Ain't nothing wrong with that. You can have a really great community that way if you just make sure that you can take care of yourself and them at the same time. Otherwise, it's a setup. It's a setup. But in any case, thank you for joining us. Make sure that you catch Queen Candance every single Wednesday for Royalty. She's giving financial tips. I mean, you heard just the tip of the iceberg on this episode of how to be helpful, because she's helpful every single week, trying to help you with all sorts of things having to do with this Rona check that's coming out, all sorts of things related to your finances and savings and investings and getting homes. And so make sure you check her out every single Wednesday on Young Boss Media. Thank you, Candance.
You're very, very welcome, my dear.
So helpful. Oh my God, I nearly forgot to put the card.
I was just about to remind you, like, don't forget to pull it.
My cards are right behind me. So All right. Let's pick a card. I wonder what it's going to be today, because honestly, this is an odd topic. This is not the same energy as just following your intuition. This is a lot more than that. So let's see what we get. All righty. So can you see this? Is the Magician card.
Yeah.
All right. So it's the first card in the deck. I'm going to go ahead and go right to the description so I don't botch the actual meaning of the card, because, I usually get the dark version of this. And so I'm trying to figure out the good version. So belief and focus can make things happen. Knowing this truth is my magical weapon. And so this card stands for faith, inner knowing, focus, manifestation, white magic, and optimism. So it's not about illusion. It's about real, actual magic, not really making things happen that just look good, but really being able to make things happen. So knowing how to use your personal power to manifest what you really want. And so he's able to channel what he needs from the world and make it happen through the strengths and the magic that is. So really the gift and sort of the lesson of the card is to concentrate your attention and action on things that are intentional and purposeful. Belief in yourself and belief in the universe, right? That if you set your boundaries, that things will still go the way that they should, and that you will be okay, you will be taken care of, right? And then ability to make things happen. And then the phrase for this card is as above, so below. So take from this what you will, right? And so this is use your magic for good out here, people. Try to use whatever talents you got to be helpful. And if you ain't got the talent, pass it off to somebody who does, and make sure that you know the difference, because it's not all your job, right? All right, my dear. Gracias. And thanks for the reminder to pick that card. I nearly forgot. We'll see you guys next week, or People Always Ask.